Hello, and welcome to this special edition podcast on Social Mobility Day. I am Jo, founder of Red Lotus Consultancy.
And I'm Toni. I'm the founder of the Common Good Network.
Fab, and we have come together today to talk about our social mobility journeys and our shifting of our own mindsets into founding our own companies, the Red Lotus Consultancy and the Common Good Network.
Yeah.
So, um, we're building something special, something a little bit different, a system that works for people like us. So why don't we start by sharing your story, Toni?
Yeah. Okay. So I was born and brought up on a council estate in Basingstoke, very kind of traditional working class background. And what's interesting, actually, when you think about social mobility, is that, like investments, it can go down as well as up.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of emphasis. So I ultimately have a good news story where I kind of went way beyond what was predicted for someone of my background. But actually, prior to that, my family experienced downward social mobility. So, we had that classic two parents doing manual or part time work. And then when my dad died when I was a teenager, we became reliant on the benefit system. And so I've got sort of, acute experience of what it feels like to fall backwards when you have nothing to fall back on. And then through some stuff I'm sure that we'll get into, I was able to forge a corporate career and worked at Microsoft for 10 years. And then I left to set up on my own. So today, I've spent like 7 years as a keynote speaker on social mobility.
Wow.
And most recently, I founded the Common Good Network. So,
Excellent.
how
Thank
about
you.
you?
So my journey, so much resonates there with my own journey. So I grew up on a really rough council estate. My dad left when I was 3. My mum had a horrendously traumatic childhood.
Mm,
She was in the care system. She was abused by people that were there to look after her, and she repeated that pattern of abuse into her adult life. And
mm,
so my dad wasn't around. She had significant mental health issues, in and out of abusive relationships with men, and lived on benefits as well. She wasn't well enough to work.
mm,
And sadly, from about the age of 8, we became her carer. She was in and out of hospital. We were in and out of the care system. And she had this repeated pattern of trying to end her own life.
mm,
And so from the age of 8, we were constantly, looking out for when would be the next time that she would try to end her own life. And sadly, when I was 18, she was successful and she committed suicide.
mm,
And that meant overnight we became financially independent. We became homeless. The council kicked us out of our council estate. And so, I had to really fend for myself from the age of 18. And that meant sofa surfing for a few years. It meant
mm,
working in a casino at nights to get myself through college. And luckily, I secured a role at Nationwide at the age of 20. And that was a very pivotal point in my life in which, it fundamentally gave me access to opportunities that most people like me don't get access to. And I had fantastic opportunities to grow my career, to develop myself, to go on leadership development programs, and to share my story. And it has been amazing and it has changed my life. But I am really keen now that I use Red Lotus Consultancy to give back and to help other people go on that ladder and lift them up as they grow.
mm. And what's quite striking to me, and like you say, there's a number of things we have in common. Um, for many people, you get into corporate
Yeah.
and they go, "You've made it."
Yeah.
And I know when I left Microsoft, people went, "Oh, you're so brave."
Yeah.
I'm really not brave. I've done braver things
Yeah.
to leave corporate. Um, so I'm interested to know, and this is, I guess, kind of quite fresh for you right now, but given that you'd made it, uh, why why not just keep feathering your nest? Why set up something to help other people?
Yeah, and I don't think you ever feel like you make it when you come from our background, do you? There is
No.
always that fear of it unraveling, of it falling apart, of us going backwards and going back to where we came from in terms of the council estate or living on benefits.
Yeah.
But I'd spent 20 years at Nationwide. And, I'd had fantastic opportunities, but there came a point where it didn't feel enough anymore.
Mm.
And that I wanted to do more. I wanted to take a bit of a risk to back myself. And I spent 20 years, making decisions based on fear, making
Mm.
decisions based on the core value that I have of financial stability. And
Mm.
Nationwide gave me that. But it comes a point in your life when if you only make decisions based on fear and being in your comfort zone, then you stop growing, you stop feeling challenged.
Mm.
And so for me, taking this leap of faith into leaving my corporate career and doing something that I feel is quite meaningful is about that next stage of my own social mobility journey and pushing myself out of my comfort zone to get that growth, but also being able to take my lived experience, combined in that with my corporate experience, to hopefully do something really meaningful to help other
Mm.
people that have so much potential go on to have really good careers and change their lives.
And how will that? How do you see that working out? So what does Red Lotus Consultancy do?
So Red Lotus Consultancy, it's an organisation that is aimed to support businesses unlock hidden talent already within the workplace. Whenever I talk to people about social mobility, people automatically go into outreach activity, early careers. How do we support students? How do we get people into university? How do we get people access into corporate spaces? And that is all so important. There's a lot of organisations out there already doing that work, and so I don't want to duplicate what there already is. For me, Red Lotus is about helping those people that are already in the workplace, that haven't had access to university, that haven't had access to early career initiatives, and may feel stuck in their
Mm.
career. There is so much potential already in the workplace that is hidden because of internal barriers that we impose on ourselves, or
Mm.
biases within a broken system. So I will be there to support businesses break down some of those barriers for hidden talent already in the workplace, through keynotes, through business consultancy, through advice work, and through a 12-month leadership development program, which I'm co-creating with my wonderful friend Paul Scadden. And that will be designed to take people on a journey, with the real kind of bespoke needs of people that come from low income, low opportunity backgrounds in mind, to help them understand who they are, to
Mm.
understand what their potential is, and to really equip them with the skills that they need in the future to help them navigate that broken system. But combined in that with working with the employer and the business to help fix that broken system at the same time. So it's a two-pronged approach: help them navigate it as an individual, but help the business try to break down some of those systemic issues that are holding people back. But anyway, enough about me, Tony. Tell me a little bit about the Common Good Network, sorry.
It's a common good. Yeah. So I think for me, a thing I did like ages ago, I started doing a podcast called
Yeah,
Challenging University
love that.
because I wanted to challenge the idea
Yeah,
that you have to go to
yeah.
uni to enjoy a rewarding, successful, interesting career. And that was based on the fact that my children, who were, one's 19, one's 16, at school, were told that uni is best. And I I was that parent.
Mhm.
So I got in touch with their teacher. So, excuse me, but can I just say, not everyone can
Yeah,
access or wants to go to uni. And so I started interviewing people that either hadn't gone or went later or did open university or did a degree through the military or did a degree apprenticeship. And I got to meet all these really interesting founders and all sorts of people, and that included some founders of organizations that were doing really grassroots work to help young people in the communities where they lived to access careers or education. And I was like, how can I surface and share what these people are doing? Because it's amazing work. And I think, as you touched on, what I noticed in the social mobility conversation is sometimes it is just about finding the brightest,
mhm.
the most capable, and kind of accelerating them. And absolutely, there needs to be that, because if you're ambitious and you want to achieve more, we need to help people. But at the same time, and I found this in the community that I grew up in, so much has been stripped away. And a lot of the community resources that I was able to access as a child are no longer there.
Yeah.
And so there's a social equity piece for me. And I started mapping out these organisations, putting them on a Google map. And I thought, I'm sure I could do more with this. So I spoke to my friends at a digital agency called KB, and they said, give it to us, Tony. We'll do something with it. And so it's become this interactive map and directory where I'm showcasing and signposting not just those grassroots organisations, but also people like Making the Leap, people like Zero Gravity, people like Social Mobility Foundation, but they are sitting alongside people like Class Divide, who in Brighton are helping to change policy, which is excluding the kids with the least access to resources from the best performing schools. And I just know there's so much great work going on by so many people. I thought, what's the thing I can do to help? And I thought, I can surface and signpost this. So my ambition, we've got about 300 organisations on there at the moment. I know there are thousands,
Yeah.
but my ambition is that it becomes like the place people go to if they want to find really good social mobility, social equity organisations, whether that's corporate that's looking for someone to support and fund, or whether it's an individual that is, for example, it's got categories around people that are care experienced, because you're more likely to have experience of the care system if you're from a lower socioeconomic background, people that have experience of prison system. And this is all based on experiences from my community, my family, where every outcome that happens to people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds happened.
Yeah.
And I thought, we've got to talk about this stuff, and we've got to, if we're serious about it, we've got to be honest and help people access resources that will help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think this is going to have a huge impact for individuals, for communities, for businesses to be able to tap in and just have all of that information in one place. And the platform just looks phenomenal. So a huge
Thank you.
congratulations. And you've only been launched for 2 weeks and you've got
2 weeks.
300
It's-
organisations on there already. A huge
yeah.
congratulations.
Well, it's optimistic, and I get this sense from you, you know, we could spend ages talking about some of this stuff, but when you grow up in a really challenging environment, you've got to get on and fix
You've
things.
got to,
You've
yeah.
got, it's like, let me help you. How can I help you? Let me tell. And you've got to have that grit and optimism. Like, God, if I'd have let my background, define my attitude to life, or if I spent the whole time going, oh, poor me, I wouldn't have got anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you
yeah,
absolutely can't have that victim mindset, can
no.
you? You have to be very forward focused, very focused on growth, and very focused on what you can do to control the situation, to navigate it. But ultimately, it does feel like a lottery, doesn't it, in terms of who gets access to those
Yeah.
opportunities? And I see so many people that have the potential, that have the ability, that have the talent, that don't get access to those opportunities. And, I feel through my career at Nationwide, I won the lottery by having that access to those opportunities. And through Red Lotus, I really want to make that. I want to make it more equal for people. I want to make it fairer. I want to make sure that talented people don't go unlooked.
Mm. And what do you think are some of the sort of social mobility day hashtag is
Shift
shift
mindsets.
mindsets? So what mindsets, or what would you like to shift? What have you sort of experienced where you think, man, they need to think differently about that?
Yeah. So there's so many. God, there's so many, isn't there? Like we could probably do a whole podcast on the
Yeah.
mindsets that need shifting for sure. But one I think is a really kind of negative, dangerous mindset
Mm.
is just work harder. Work
Yeah.
harder, get your head down, do the work, and you will get access to the opportunities, and you will have access to be promoted, or to grow your career. And I remember somebody, I was probably 10 years into Nationwide at the time, and I was kind of seeking that next level, and they said to me, well, if you were good enough, why would you not have got the promotion already?
Right.
And what a terrible mindset that is to have. Like, if you're good enough, you'll have you'll have the opportunity already, and you would have got the promotion. And we know from all of the data that that's just not the case. When you come from a working class background and you're in professional services, it takes 25% longer to progress,
Mm.
and you are likely to to be paid less. So you
Yeah.
have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So, telling someone just work harder
Yeah.
isn't enough. We have to give people the right access to networks, to mentors, to sponsors, to
Mm.
help them navigate a system that wasn't designed with them in mind.
Yeah. I think that's, well, it's so
Yeah.
true. And I think that the kind of class pay gap piece, which
It's infuriating, isn't
it
it?
is infuriating because it's true. So what was it? Was it something like £6,000 less a
Yeah,
year?
12%.
12%. So for somebody who's working class compared to an equally competent peer with the same kind of educational
Yeah.
attainment. And I had a bit of a theory, part of a theory on this, is that you don't ask for more.
Yeah.
Because I'm really open, but talking about this because it was so long ago now. But I had a year where I had like 111 grand,
Yeah.
which is a disgusting amount of money. It's a great amount of money.
Great amount of money.
Great
Yeah.
amount of money. Work in sales. And this
Yeah.
is what I learned. And
Yeah.
I think this is it. I learned for me, working in sales and working in tech, amazing. Because I needed to make a I need transformational amount of money
Yeah.
to make sure, because I had no inherited wealth, no property wealth, no family money, nothing to fall back on. So if you want to lift yourself out of that, you need to make serious
Yeah.
money. But I didn't think, oh, I wonder if I'm being paid fairly.
Yeah.
And what was brilliant was that actually I had some very good mentors. And when I became a manager at Microsoft, it was great because then I got to learn how calibration works. And I got to learn that when there's a pot of money and it has to meet a bell curve and it's going around the table with
Yeah.
the senior leadership team, who's going to get
Yeah.
how much? Doesn't matter if you think you gave a 5-star performance. If nobody else has heard of you,
You're not getting it.
you're
Yeah,
not
you're not
getting it.
getting that pay rise.
Yeah. So,
But who teaches us this? Who's
yeah,
opening up those conversations to say,
yeah,
look, this is what you need to do. This is how you negotiate
yeah,
a pay rise. This is how you make yourself visible. This is how you show your worth in the
yeah,
workplace, so that when the leaders are having those conversations, your name is there. Your name is in that conversation.
yeah,
Um, and that's really important, isn't it? To help individuals from low social economic backgrounds or lower income, lower opportunity backgrounds understand what they need to do to navigate the system, so
yeah,
that they're not navigating it blind.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there is that tension between, I don't know, I was always taught, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
But then there were times when I might ask for something
Yeah.
and then feel like I'd asked the wrong question, feel like you put in your place a little bit. So I think there were times when sort of nuance I didn't quite get.
Yeah.
Because I'd grown up in an environment where it's very loud, very brash, very rough and tumble. Um, People said exactly what they thought, which is quite refreshing,
Yeah.
actually.
I love it.
Yeah, you're here for that. So to be in an environment where people might not say what they think or might say it in a coded way or have little rules that you don't know, that I found a bit
Mm.
disorientating at times. Because you feel, what have I done wrong?
Yeah.
And it's just,
And what's the impact that then has on you
yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of your psychological well-being and your mental
yeah,
health? But have you
yeah.
have you felt that in terms of the long-term impacts across your working career?
I think it's funny. You have to get comfortable with who you really are. I think there's a little bit of that. Um, and again, I've worked with some really good people who said they could tell there was a role that I took that wasn't for me, but I really wanted it. I
Yeah.
really wanted it to prove it to myself, to prove I could do it. Couldn't do it. But it was a values clash. And that
Yeah.
was quite interesting that I hadn't what I gained, and this is where I think the corporate space can really help people from low socioeconomic backgrounds, is the soft skills training. Oh my God. And the language that I got to learn, which I just didn't get. And even in things like when I became a mother, because I had, disposable income, because I had a lovely corporate career, I did National Childbirth Trust. And I learned again a language that gave me access to better care within the NHS, but
Yeah.
I was so much better informed,
Yeah.
and I knew how to ask for what I wanted in a way that would get me the support that I needed. And I've witnessed that so many times, just where language can, the words that you use, and my daughter was doing it in sociology, where it was about if you use elaborate or restricted language. So, restricted might be, give me that biscuit. I used to do that a lot. But elaborate might be, oh, yes, I hear that, these shortbreads are wonderful. Might I try one? It's just about
Yeah.
how you ask for the things that you want. So, yeah, I've definitely, I think the long-term impact is that I changed the way I spoke and the language that I used.
So you changed yourself to conform to the corporate environment that you're in.
I think there was a bit of that. Yeah. And then I realised that you don't have to completely suit up. I did. This looked like, but carry my little Lego person with me.
Oh,
So
tell me about her.
this is a stormtrooper who has taken off her helmet,
Yeah.
shaking out her pink hair. And a guy I used to work with, Tony Cox, did a photo of the woman holding the helmet. And I was like, oh my God, that's me taking off corporate armour. Because I found that actually at the times when I was myself, that's when people would go, oh my God, Tony, thanks for talking about that because I feel the
Yep.
same.
Yeah.
You relate to
Resonates
people.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I keep her with
I
me
love
just to
that. Well,
remind me.
always.
If I'm sort of out and about,
Yeah.
yeah, if I'm traveling, if I'm going to do something, I'm like, just to keep me honest.
Yeah. I think it's such an important topic that you've touched on there in terms of code switching and trying to be something that we're not, and not being our authentic self in the
Mm,
workplace. And I think it's really important as leaders that we create this psychological safety so
mm,
that people can bring themselves, they can be authentic, they can show up and talk about the things that are bothering them, because other people will resonate with that.
yeah.
And I've always found that when I've been in teams where I can be my authentic self and I can show up as I am, that's when I perform at my best, and that's when I give
Mm,
I get the best results. When I'm trying to be something that I'm not, when I'm trying to be too corporate or too polished, or fit into the molds that I
mm,
just don't fit into, then I'm spending far too much energy on trying to fit in as opposed to getting the results that I know that I'm capable of.
mm,
And I think, for corporates, we absolutely need to create that psychological safety where people can be them true selves and
mm.
not constantly code switch between who they are at home and who they are in the workplace.
So, what do you think are some of the practical things that an organisation could do that would overcome that?
So I think creating that safe space for people to talk, to
Mm,
listen, to have role models, to have your leadership team talk about and share their own social mobility journeys if you've got leaders that have been socially mobile. To have role models, to have active employee resource groups where people can come together and share
mm,
that lived experience, I found has been really, really powerful in the past, for bringing collective people together. For me, it's creating that real safe space where people can talk about the experiences that they're going through, positive or negative, and just have the opportunity for people to listen. What
What
about
was
you? Have you got any? Go on.
uh yeah, I'll come on to
Yeah,
some of the
yeah.
things that I think. But what was your first job at Nationwide?
My first job at Nationwide, 20 years ago, crikey, was I was working as a temp in the admin centre processing mortgage applications.
So, how common do you think it is for people to follow the career trajectory that you did?
From my background, not
Mm,
very common at all.
mm,
So most people that worked in the admin centre stayed there for a huge amount of time,
mm,
10, 15, 20 years in the same department. I moved around a lot.
mm.
When you look at my CV, generally I was only in roles for 18 months, 2 years, because I got itchy feet and I
Yeah,
I had this desire to want to do something new.
yeah,
So my goal was always be as good as you can in that role and then move on, learn
yeah.
as much as you can, move on. And that really worked for me because it meant that I had this really diverse skill set,
Mm,
and it meant that I was really adaptable and able to apply lots of different resources into different jobs.
mm. It is, it's interesting because I think similarly, it's that itchy feet thing. I thought, what's
Yeah.
next? What's next?
Yeah.
Because I would watch people, all met them, just like go under the radar. Just going to
Yeah.
sit here under the radar for 10 years, take the money,
Yeah.
happy days. And
Yeah.
I thought I could never do that.
No.
I thought, oh God, I'd be so bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting that, and because I'd wondered if in some sectors, like, I guess, would you consider it retail banking? Would that be
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah.
If it is more likely that somebody could go from, say, working on the cashier desk to then working for head office. I know some firms like Enterprise, who have like the car rental business, they've got a program to help because they have offices or facilities in so many towns that people would consider cold spots. They've said, oh, we have got a route where people could go from working in one of our car rental centres to bringing them into more of a head office type
Yeah.
role. So I'm interested in that. But I was thinking, based on some of the things that I've seen and some of the experiences I've had, I think finding ways for organisations to do things that aren't reliant on prior knowledge or specialist equipment, like if you're having an offsite.
Yeah.
We did some good stuff at Microsoft, which was there was like a fundraising activity, or you might do a ropes course. And I think things like that can help avoid those situations where, like, if you've done an exec board meeting and people go to sports, and if I think about my exposure to sport growing up, was everyone liked football, you didn't like rugby
Yeah.
because rugby was for posh people. Um, and my exposure to football was the songs. Oh my God, I could tell you football chants that are not appropriate for this, but I couldn't hold that conversation about what's England's flipping cricket heritage, or there were so
Yeah.
many things that I felt excluded from participating in. But if you ask me about music, if I could talk to somebody about what music they like or what books they like, or I don't know, finding ways for people to connect on a level that isn't dependent on having access to expensive or elite hobbies, I think
Yeah.
is a big thing that I think
Absolutely.
works. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like tennis, and when you think like, oh, then you feel stupid. And I'm not stupid, but I would think, why don't I know this stuff? And when you try and gain that knowledge when it's not culturally, what you grew up with, it's really hard.
Yeah, and I've just got to the point now where I just own it, and I just say know absolutely nothing about tennis. I know
Yeah.
absolutely nothing about skiing. I'm
Yeah.
not interested. I like warm weather. I don't like don't
Yeah.
like holidaying in where there's snow and cold weather.
Yeah.
And I think, but you have to get to a point where you feel confident enough in yourself to be able to say to somebody that has that type of background,
Yeah.
do you know, I don't know. I'm okay with not knowing. It's not of interest to me.
Yeah. I did an event at Knight Frank, and one of the team, she said, is it okay for me to say I'd rather just sit and watch telly because that's what I really enjoy? And I was like, yeah. But
Absolutely.
it was quite a moment for me, sort of made me think about the times when, I've had some amazing experiences. And this thing I would say, like being in that corporate environment, and it was so exciting. I mean, I went to Niagara Falls for work.
Nice.
Went to-
That's on my bucket list, that
yeah.
is.
I mean, as part of, went all around America, went all around Europe, did some incredible things, went to lovely theatre performances, I went to see Take That for work.
Nice.
So I've had so many great experiences, and I've loved it, enjoyed every minute of it. And I think there is also, there's a degree of that in that shifting mindsets where, for me, I don't mind saying there would be times when probably it would seem like I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Sometimes you've got to go, you need to bin that and just enjoy the experience for what it
Yeah.
is. And nobody chooses where they're born or the family they're born into. Um, but I think it is that feeling okay with deciding, I'm going to try that. And if I don't like it, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, I don't have to become this thing that I'm not. Yeah.
So, Tony, we put a call to action out on LinkedIn, and
Yes.
Mohammed asked us an incredible question around,
Yeah.
if you were born today, do you think your social mobility journey would be the same? What are
Mm.
your thoughts on that? It's a great question.
It's a great question. And I think it's, I mean, it's fun. I think instinctively part of me thinks yes, because your character is your
Yeah.
character. And I think like you're like, what's next? What's next? What can I do? How can I help? Where's the opportunity? Can I get in? And I did have a friend who said to me, you always find a way, Tony. And I did think, yeah, I probably do. Like,
It's a superpower, isn't it? That resourcefulness.
yeah. And actually, that this is something that if you think about what a person might bring to your organization. I had a manager, she was a hiring manager at the time, and she characterized that hiring for ad over fit. So when she interviewed me, she was like, "You're not a graduate." I went, "I know." She said, "So can I have a character reference?" And I didn't know any proper people. I mean, I'm surrounded by them now. You can't move for solicitors and doctors where I live, but I had to give her the name of a friend who I went to Faliraki on holiday with when I was
So that
17.
was an interesting character reference.
Yes. And luckily, the story she shared was where I went to visit her in hospital every day. She was seriously ill. And the hiring manager said it told her something about my resourcefulness, loyalty, willingness to take on big challenges, dealing with ambiguity. I mean,
Yeah.
this does sound like a whole like
Big skill set. Oh.
and adaptability. And when you come from that background of resources being tight or non-existent, you have to find a way.
Yeah.
You have to find, and it might be calling on a neighbor or finding a different route, or working out how you're going to move out of or not repeat a cycle. Enormous. um so I think there is that, done right, if you look to bring in talent from different socioeconomic backgrounds, you get some of that real adaptability and resourcefulness and resilience and ability to just sort of think outside of normal constraints. So do I think I would have done the same journey? It would have been different because we've got different tools now. But I think I'm going to say yeah, because I think it was it's a question of character, and I would like to hope, whilst there is a real issue at a community level of things that have been stripped out due to policy and investment, we have got so many organisations that want to help young. It's how do you close that gap of matching those that want to help with
Yeah.
those that need help.
Yeah. You touched a bit there about some of the benefits to businesses by
Mm.
having more of a diverse workforce in terms of, you know, removing some of that group think, having
Mm.
diverse thinking, and the benefits for businesses are huge, right? Like
Mm.
better innovation, better creativity, better decision making, faster decision making, and the financial benefits as well are
Mm.
not to be sniffed at. There was some recent research done that shows that if employers in the UK focus on social mobility, that would have 16 billion increase to GDP,
Wow.
and 1.8 billion annually to
Mm.
profits. This is something that businesses can't ignore any
Mm.
longer. Like, if you want to be competitive in an ever changing industry, you've got to focus on social mobility. You've got to have that diverse thinking and
Mm.
that diverse workforce to really take you to the next level.
Well, and I think that trying to think who the data belongs to, we'll find it.
Co-op and Demos.
Okay, so this was another
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 one.
piece,
Okay.
another piece. We can put it in the show notes.
Yes.
Where it talked about organisations that invest in social mobility efforts see an uptick across other areas where they wish to improve. So, like women in business or people from a different ethnicities, because actually, where you're born and the family you're born into, it doesn't care if you are, a man or a woman, or if you're black, or if you're gay, or if, you are disadvantaged by virtue of the level of income available, the networks
Yeah.
available to you. So if you're trying to improve your diversity across the board, then actually social mobility is a brilliant place to invest your efforts. So I think that, and I must find out where that came from.
So there was some research done by Progress Together
Ah,
and
okay.
the Bridge Group, which
Yeah,
again
yeah,
insinuated that same
yeah,
ethos, really, that your social economic background is actually the biggest barrier
yeah,
to your biggest predictor of your success and your
yeah,
life outcomes, and it can hinder you more than ethnicity,
yeah,
gender, disability, sexuality.
yeah,
But when you apply multiple diversity characteristics, you get that double disadvantage,
yeah,
triple disadvantage. And therefore,
yeah,
I absolutely agree, by focusing on social economic diversity and social mobility,
yeah,
it's that cornerstone, it's that glue that lifts everyone up together. This isn't about excluding a certain demographic or characteristic. This is about bringing everyone up together so that
mm,
everybody has the opportunity to thrive and everybody has the opportunity to have access to equal opportunities.
mm. And I think what I found interesting is, through a lot of the people that I've spoken to, is that sort of generational aspect. So I got
Yeah.
asked recently, is there a generational difference with attitudes? And, it's fashionable to say that young people have the very best, like, inclusive attitudes. However, what I've noticed is that often, person to person, that there isn't that barrier. And I know some really senior, like, people that have made partner in some very big firms who've come from challenging backgrounds, but had felt that they had to maybe mask their background until they got to a level of seniority where they could feel that it didn't threaten their career. So I thought that was quite
Yeah.
interesting. But often it's the processes that get in the way. So a founder that I know, he set up his own business. He did not go to uni. It was very successful. And then he said there came a point for him where he realised that the process of recruitment he had set up within his organisation was targeting grads from particular universities. And he's like, "What have I
Light bulb
done?"
moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a bit of unpicking to do there, I think. And I know a lot of organisations are trying to do that now, to go, actually, if we just recruit from the same pool, well, then we just get a lot of the same thinking.
Yeah, you always do what you've did. You always get what you've got in the past, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of decisions are made with good intentions, aren't they? Like
Yeah.
leaders aren't making decisions with bad intentions. They're
No.
making decisions based on what they know and what they've learned in terms of their career. But absolutely, we need to start challenging some of those mindsets and shifting
Yeah.
it away from doing things in traditional ways that only hires or promotes from traditional backgrounds.
Mm. And what do you think? So you've got younger children than
I have,
mine.
yeah, 7 and 4.
Yeah. So I've got one in the workforce and one doing GCSEs right now. I'm interested to know, sort of from that kind of AI tech perspective, what do you think that's kind of going to do to, I don't know, people's opportunities? Do you see it having a big impact on?
I think it's huge, right? And
Mm,
it scares me to some degree. Firstly, in terms of what AI is capable of, in terms
mm,
of, when my kids are out there on social media, and
mm,
what people can do with their personal information or their images. So
mm,
as a parent, that really, really scares me, the
mm,
pace of change from an AI perspective. But in terms of the kind of the widening of opportunities based on
mm,
AI is huge, isn't it? Like, AI can be something that is used as a leverage and a lever to bridge the gap of opportunity, or it can be something, and it's most likely going to be something that makes that gap bigger.
mm,
And people that don't have access to the resources or the funding to be able to understand and maximize AI are likely going to find that those opportunities are harder to maximize.
mm.
What about you? What are your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, well, I think this is something you touched on there, because I know, like, the digital, easy for me to say, Digital Poverty Alliance. So, there is, and this is, I think, from a shifting mindsets perspective, there is this trope of, oh, these people on benefits, they've all got the latest iPhone,
Yeah.
and that gets my back up. because actually there are lots of people who can't access the internet. There's lots of people that don't have broadband. And I know I'm going to call them DPA because it's easier to say, have statistics to back this up. And, you've got young people that can't study because they don't have the space to study and they don't have the technology to be able to access tools that many people take for granted. And I read a kind of a good kind of rebuke on that, perception of, well, why should everybody have a device? And it's like, will you try accessing anything without access to the internet? If you need to apply for child benefit, or, if you're not online,
Yeah.
you're completely cut off from a lot of society.
Yeah.
So I think you've got the issue of digital poverty, but also thinking about things like AI. And it's interesting talking to my kids about this, because for things like exams, and I've got friends whose kids are doing degree courses, and they've said there's this whole thing now where you've got two sets of like large language models talking to each other,
Yeah.
because you've got the potential that a young person could write their dissertation with AI. Then you've got them running it through a tool to make it look like it hasn't
Oh gosh.
gone through
Yeah.
AI. Then you've got exam boards, as I understand it, using a large language model to detect if a paper has been submitted using AI. And I spoke to someone at an accounting firm that I spoke at the other day, and they said on one course, everybody had had their mark downgraded by a percentage to adjust for AI. When you go, I wonder if, like, I know there are so many ways in which it is helping organizations do things like personalize offering, or maybe make finance available to people who struggle to access finance. So there are all sorts of use cases where I see it could work. But I do think at that human level, we need human interaction. We need to speak to one another. And I read a piece on LinkedIn by, I think it's Dr. Eliza Philby, if I've got it right, and she's a specialist in generations or generational workforces. And she spoke about there is a challenge now with young people in the workforce where their communication electronically is not the same as the interaction face to
Oh,
face,
interesting. Yeah.
because they're using AI to create highly professional communications. And now you've got managers going, what I get on email isn't the same as what I experience in person. So there's
Yeah.
this kind of, it was a bit of a call to arms to say, we need to remember the value and importance of human interaction when we're trying to coach, help, mentor, direct, connect, all those kind of
Yeah.
things.
And probably again another big area that we could go into and unpick, but is the education system set up now for the future of AI? Like, is the
Mm,
education system setting our young people up, or are they setting them up for failure in a world that will be so heavily driven by AI?
mm,
And are they then enabling that level of, well, how do you interact and how do you have those softer skills
mm,
when we're relying on AI so much in the workplace? So for me, I think the education system is massively falling behind and is letting
mm.
our kids down and not necessarily setting them up for a future that they can thrive in the workplace.
Yeah, and I wonder, because there is a big thing of, for many people in education, they've always been in education and not been in industry. And I know you've got things like the programs where you can retrain as a teacher, so they bring in a more of a breadth of opinion. And it's a challenge for schools, isn't it, to know, like, careers advice that's been drawn up 5 years ago
Yeah,
already
not relevant,
feels
irrelevant already. Yeah,
obsolete.
yeah,
But something, and I don't know if this fits in with our conversation really, but something that kept playing on my mind is that when you're in the education system and you're told about how will you, afford a house or rent, or I always remember when I was like 15, 16, my mum said, well, you go on the housing list, that's how you get a house.
yeah,
It's, and it's things like, when you know that
yeah,
someone knows, it's like,
yeah.
and you can do house swaps
Yeah.
as well. Um,
You
but
have a website for that and everything, don't you? The house swaps. Yeah,
See,
it's crazy.
and you need connection to
Yeah,
the internet to bid on a house swap.
yeah,
But it talks about the individual. And I bought my first house with my husband,
Yeah.
and we put our earnings together and have a family. And there's something in there for me about, because I spoke to there was a young person who said to me, "I'm never going to be able to afford a house." I was like, "Are you mad? Of course you will. You're really bright, and you've got a long road ahead of you, and depending on where you live, depends on how much it costs. But i- there is that thing about buying a house with someone else, creating a family, living with other people, being part of a community. And it just sort of made me think about, there's this emphasis on what you do as an individual, but collectively, we do amazing things
Yeah.
together. And so I think there's sort of something in that as well with the social mobility thing. I did feel like a lot of my journey was solo challenging, but actually a lot of it was with my friends, my boyfriend then husband. So I haven't done it on my own, but it felt like a kind of solo
Yeah.
endeavor. Yeah. Just a little ramble from me there for you, Joe.
Thanks very much,
How about
Tony.
you? Do you feel, does it resonate?
I think so much of what you have said resonates in terms of building that community and
Mm,
and feeling like you have to do things alone and
mm,
independently. I think I don't know about you, but for me it's always really difficult to ask for help. I feel that I
mm,
have to be independent. I've always been independent, so asking for
yeah.
help is a real challenge, and it feels like a bit of a kind of failure if I ask for help. But I
Mm,
definitely think there's something in there around community building and
mm.
going back to kind of and for me that's what building societies were built on. So when you were
Yes.
talking about that I was thinking, god, this sounds like why
Yeah.
a building society was
Yeah.
founded many years ago. But
Yeah.
actually, how can people from low income, low opportunity backgrounds come together to find out and figure out ways in which they could navigate the system together to get onto the housing ladder? Because not everybody
Mm.
wants to get married, not everybody wants a partner,
No.
but most people need somewhere to live. So actually, how can they navigate that through community based initiatives?
Yeah. And I think it is that it's because I think something that I found was that, lots of people don't want to leave where they live. And
Yeah,
there is that thing about leave to achieve. I had to, because I knew if I didn't leave, cycle was going to repeat itself
yeah,
because I had to leave.
yeah,
But that is incredibly hard and isolating and upsetting. Um, and so for many people, it's like, no, I want to be around the people that know me,
yeah,
that I can go to and say, this has happened, and they won't go, oh God. Um, so I think, and I live in a fairly small, it sounds like a commune. I live in a village, but we know our people know each other. We know our neighbours. We can call on them. We've all been involved in helping look after each other's kids. You sort of,
yeah.
that's
Love that real
really,
sense of community. Yeah,
yeah, it makes an enormous difference. So I think actually with that social mobility conversation, social isolation is kind of a thread within that. But I know I've seen some great community efforts happening um, around the country, and actually, so St Neots in Cambridge have got, is it called Inspire to Ignite, and they've set up a community hub which acts as a place for people to get careers advice, access employment, but go and have a nice coffee. Because sometimes if you go to like a job centre plus, you feel like you've done something wrong
yeah,
just
yeah,
walking in the door. So and this is some of the stuff I wanted to capture with the Common Good Network. I see some just like beautiful pockets of look what can be done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
I know.
amazing.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Tony, how can people get involved with the Common Good Network?
Well, you can go to thecommongood.network. Go and have a look at the site, have a play with it. Really, you can list your organization on there. So, any organization that's helping people overcome socioeconomic barriers to opportunities, we want to capture those. I'm on a project at the moment to add all of the charitable arms of football clubs at the moment. There's a lot. So go check out the site, connect with me on LinkedIn, book me to speak, because at the moment my speaking work is helping to fund the platform. Um, But yeah, just like come join us. Come on in, the water's lovely. How about you?
So for me, I guess if something has stirred something in leaders today, then please take the opportunity to look at your workforce, to look at your leadership, to look at your talent pipeline, and try and understand what's missing, whose voices are missing. Are you diverse enough? And if you're not, if this has stirred something and you want to take action, then please reach out. And I'd be delighted to business partner with you and your organisation to help you change the dial and to really move forward on social mobility.
Thanks, Jo.